Thank you for stopping by Grains of Small Places, and today I'm going to show you how we make one of my favorite breads. This is going to be a blueberry bread, and it's a quick bread, so no need to add yeast or anything like that. This is fairly quick, but it does bake for a long time in the oven, but it's something you can throw together really quickly and have without having to wait for all the rise times and things like that. So I just wanted to show something a little bit different, and this one is going to use half spelt flour and half soft white wheat flour. So you can use different varieties of different grains that you prefer, but this is what we're using for today. And I will make sure to put a link to the recipe in the description box below. That way you can print it out if you'd like to have it. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to show you how I make a quick and easy buttermilk substitute. Of course, if you have buttermilk on hand, you could just use that, but I almost never have it on hand. So I always have these ingredients on hand to make it work. Okay, so to do this, I just use regular whole milk, or the Fairlife milk for our family, and 1 tablespoon of vinegar. This recipe actually only calls for 2/3 cup of milk, but I usually just use just short of a tablespoon of vinegar in it. And I promise you, you won't taste the vinegar in the bread at the end. It will thicken as it sits, and it'll start to look a little curdled, and that's kind of what you're looking for. First, to start this blueberry bread recipe, I'm going to mill some flour, and I decided that a combination of soft white wheat and spelt would be perfect for this recipe. So I weighed out about 270 grams total of wheat berries, and I used about 3/4 of a cup of soft white wheat and 2/3 a cup of spelt berries. Once milled, this should yield me about 2¼ cups of flour or so. I love to mix and match my grains. I think it makes the best of both worlds, in flavor and in texture. I'll make sure to put a link in the description box below for the printable recipe. If you're interested in learning more about milling your own flour at home, I have a great place to start. Fresh Milled Flour 101. I have a video and a blog post. I can put links to those as well. And we're just going to go ahead and mill those wheat berries into beautiful fresh milled flour. Okay, I'm just going to set this buttermilk substitute to the side as we continue with the rest of the recipe. So to my freshly milled flour, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And I just briefly stir that together. Now back to my wet ingredients. To my little milk mixture buttermilk substitute thing here, I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla, and I love to make my own homemade vanilla. I can put a link to that recipe video as well. Then I'm going to use a 1/2 cup of olive oil, and 1 cup of sugar. You could also substitute honey here and do maybe a 1/2 cup of honey if you prefer it to be less sweet or just a healthier version of sugar. That's up to you. That's what's great about all these recipes, is you can kind of customize them to what works for you and your family. Then I'm going to add 1 egg, and I'm just going to mix it all together before adding it to my dry ingredients. And at some point, we're going to need to preheat our oven, so preheat that to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I'm going to mix all the ingredients together to combine. So I'm going to pour the wet ingredients into my flour mixture here. Before we add in our blueberries, we want to just mix it up and make sure there's no dry ingredients showing. Now, I have had success with both fresh or frozen blueberries, but I wanted to show you just a little trick for adding fruit to your quick breads. I'm going to add about 1 to 2 tablespoons of some more freshly milled soft white wheat flour to my blueberries, and I'm just going to toss them around to coat the blueberries, and this will help ensure that your blueberries, or any fruit for that matter, stays evenly distributed in your bread instead of all sinking to the bottom. I'm not sure if that's ever happened to you before, but this is just a simple trick or hack that helps. Once they're all coated with the flour, now we can just gently fold them into the batter. Okay, now I'm going to go line my bread tin with some parchment paper and then spray it with oil. This helps it to not stick, but it also gives me handles to remove it from the pan after it's done baking. I'm just going to pour all the batter in after I've folded in my blueberries and spread it evenly up on the top as best as possible, and then pop it in my preheated oven. And this is going to take somewhere between 55 and 65 minutes. Your oven may be different than mine. I would start checking it at about 50 minutes and just stick a little toothpick in there and see if it comes out clean or not. It's okay if the toothpick comes out a little bit wet, but you don't want any batter coming off. Okay, so now we're back in Ohio, and we'll probably be here for a little while visiting some family. We park in the back of like my parents' yard, so we have all of this space for the dogs to kind of play around, and we keep them in this just small space here for just every day, you know, letting them in and out. And that's actually one of our sheds that Matt built several years ago, actually, so that we could keep just some important things like photos and things like that. And while we're here, we're going to be putting an addition on my parents' cabin. So I don't know if you know, but about a little over a year ago, my parents' house burned down, actually, or at least mostly, and it was a complete remodel, but they had a small cabin that they kept in their yard. So while we were in Florida is actually when it happened, and we came back last year to help get that cabin ready for them to live in while the house was being remodeled. Well, they really enjoyed the small living and just kind of minimalistic vibes, so they went ahead and decided to stay in the cabin. The cabin is pretty small, so after being in it for a little over a year, they decided they would like to add a little separate space for their bedroom. So we're putting a cabin addition that's just going to be like a master bedroom and a small little half bath. It's still going to be pretty small in comparison to what they were living in before, but since it's just the two of them, it's about the perfect size. So I'll keep you updated as we do a little bit of that work with the addition. That way you can kind of follow along and see what we're up to. And this is the deck, actually. Let me see. Sorry. And I'm standing currently on, I don't know if you can see, whatever, a deck that Matt built several years ago as well. So while we're parked here, we can have a little small space to enjoy outside and enjoy the lovely and beautiful weather, because it's really pretty right now. And that's not always to be said for Ohio weather. So we got lucky. Already started having to rip off the old deck so we could put the new on, but we discovered there was a little bit of an unsafe situation right out the door here. It wasn't really being supported or held by anything. So first thing, we had to remove a tree in order to add in this addition. So Matt and Haley did that a day or two before this. Then we had to demo out the old deck and pour concrete for the pylons for the raised foundation. Matt moves pretty fast. Now we have the floor going down, and there's insulation under this OSB sandwiched in. And now the bread is done, and it smells heavenly in here. I like to let any quick bread cool for about 10 minutes or so in the pan before I pull it out, just to let it set. And then I'm going to pull it out using my little handles that I have here to finish cooling on a wire rack. And just look how moist and beautiful this is. And the little blueberry hack did seem to work. I hope you enjoyed following me along while I made this blueberry bread. Don't forget to like this video if you found something that you liked, or leave a comment with any other ideas you'd like to see me do. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell at the bottom for the notifications. That way you'll know when I'm going to put out more videos. I put out videos at least once a week, and I also put out the recipes on my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net. You can find this recipe and a whole bunch of other recipes, all using fresh milled flour. So thanks for stopping by Grains and Small Places. Goodbye.